Welcome to Hayden Post Senior Speech. Joining us today are his parents, Dr. Lauren Post and Dr. Alex Post, his brother Ian, so please give them a warm welcome. All right, so in 20 years of teaching, I've only encountered a few students that I can say have or will become lifelong friends. There's something very different about working with these students that makes our work together unique and empowering. With Hayden, it's always been engaging in the full spectrum of dialogue, from Instagram memes to stuffing a B58 twin-turbo i6 into my Z3. We're Z3 bros, by the way. All the while designing and establishing AP Motorsports Engineering as the premier engineering program in the Southeast. I'm not sure what this program looks like today without him. I still have a clear memory of that almost chubby, hardly 5-foot-tall kid with magenta dye hair coming into my Art 2 class in 7th grade. So much has changed, and we've all grown. Hayden is captain of our varsity soccer team. He's student section president and service club president. He also has a bunch of years playing, I think since his time in New Jersey, with what is the subject of his senior speech. So please welcome Hayden Post to the stage.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for the wonderful introduction and for being not only a great advisor for the past 3 years, but also an amazing friend and mentor for the past 6. You've been nothing but supportive for everything I do. Second, I would like to thank my family for their support and everything they do for me. Now for the history of lacrosse. Through this presentation, I will talk about how lacrosse started, how it developed, some major milestones for the sport, and what lacrosse looks like both in the US and abroad. Let's start at the beginning. Lacrosse, originally called Tehunsiquaxex by the Mohawks, was one of the most important parts of Iroquois culture and is known as the creator's game. They believed that the first lacrosse game was played between birds and mammals, and that the game was given to them to be used for medicine and entertainment. These games hold immense importance to the Native Americans, as they believed that playing the game would heal them both physically and spiritually. Even to this day, Haudenosaunee tribes hold ceremonial medicine games which they believe help heal the sick. They believed that when they were playing the game, they were playing alongside their ancestors as well. Lacrosse had many purposes, other than being medicinal, including training the men for war and helping settle disputes within the community and within surrounding communities. Early lacrosse rules were very loose, as there could be anywhere from 100 to over 1,000 men playing at once. By the ends of these games, many players were seriously injured and had broken bones, and some could never play again. Early lacrosse equipment was very minimal. They had no pads, which led to lots of injuries, and every player had a custom-made wooden stick, some of which had net baskets to help catch and hold the ball. The first lacrosse balls were made of deer hide and stuffed with feathers to give it its shape. The goals were typically natural landmarks and sometimes had nets made of deer sinew or the tendons from the back of the deer. The gameplay looked nothing like today's lacrosse, as the fields they played on could span for miles and games could last for days on end. Gameplay consisted of a person running with the ball and everyone else hitting the stick or the player's arms and legs to get him to drop the ball. One thing people liked doing during these games was sports betting. A European priest said that some would even go as far as betting their wives, children, and themselves into servitude. Lacrosse is an interesting place in American history, as during the 7 Years' War, a group called the Ojibwe became unhappy with British inhabitants in Fort Michilimackinac, and so they devised a plan. A group of Ojibwe played lacrosse outside the fort, and while the guards were distracted, some women stole weapons and killed all the British inside. The Ojibwe gained control of the fort for roughly a year until it was taken back. Now back to the history of lacrosse itself. When European missionaries first witnessed the game, they played in Quebec, they called it lacrosse, as they thought the sticks resembled the bishop's cross during services. As more European settlers arrived and they started playing the sport, they began to add more rules to make the game more civilized. In 1856, the Montreal Lacrosse Club was founded, marking the beginning of organized lacrosse. Less than a decade later, George Beers, a Montreal dentist, wrote the first rule book for the sport. The rules he added included limiting the number of players on the field to 12 a team, replacing the outdated deer hide ball for a new rubber one, putting a time limit on the game, and making a field of reasonable size. The Europeans liked the new game so much that they thought they should bring it back home. In 1867, the National Lacrosse Association was formed, and lacrosse was introduced to England in an exhibition match for Queen Victoria. The Queen described the game as very pretty to watch. This game marked the beginning of international growth for the sport, and the sport became so popular that by the 1900s there were multiple teams in Canada, the US, England, Australia, and New Zealand. In 1904, lacrosse made its debut in the Olympics and was played again in 1908, however never played again after that. Lacrosse was removed from the Olympics due to its lack of international involvement, as the US and Canada were too dominant in the sport to have any other competition. It was also difficult to have lacrosse as an Olympic sport, as there was no uniform set of rules between the countries. Instead of the Olympics, nations played the World Lacrosse Championships, which occurred every 4 years and were originally between Australia, England, Canada, and the US. In 1995, the European Lacrosse Federation was created to promote the growth of the sport throughout Europe. While lacrosse was becoming popular in Europe, it was spreading in the US. In 1879, the US National Amateur Lacrosse Association was created, making it the first American lacrosse league. In the 1880s, lacrosse became popular in many Northeastern colleges, including NYU, Princeton, Yale, and Harvard, and in 1906, an intercollegiate lacrosse league would be formed. The sport became popular enough in the ILL that the NCAA sponsored intercollegiate lacrosse competition. Since becoming sponsored by the NCAA, lacrosse has become increasingly popular in areas much further west than previously played. As lacrosse has become more popular, more variations of lacrosse have risen, including box lacrosse and women's lacrosse, both of which are modified versions of typical field lacrosse. In 2001, the Major Lacrosse League had its inaugural season, and while unpopular to fans, provided a start for professional lacrosse. Women's lacrosse has developed alongside men's every step of the way. In 1890, the first game of women's lacrosse ever was introduced by Louisa Lumsden in Scotland. In 1912, the English Ladies Lacrosse Association was formed, and over the next decade, women's lacrosse made its way back to America. And in 1926, the first American women's team was started by Russell Sinclair. 5 years later, the Women's Lacrosse Association was formed as the governing body of women's lacrosse in the States. This is a different governing body from the men's, as the women have different rules and equipment. While women's lacrosse is based on the same sport, the gameplay is very different. There's no contact between players, and it requires much more teamwork. The equipment is also very different. In women's lacrosse, none of the players wear pads except for the goalies, and the sticks are unique. The biggest difference between men's and women's lacrosse is the brutality of play. In this first video, you'll see a very aggressive game with a bunch of hard, legal hits.
Joey Spolino, right pointing it back to the cage in game one with 4 goals then. Another 3 goals and 4 assists then. Colgate, after a spell, has trouble turning it around. It finally picks up. The Raiders lost the ground ball game by 3 against Penn State. It's going to take the win. Syracuse, a big.
As you can see, men's lacrosse can be pretty rough. However, women's lacrosse is very different due to the lack of pads. In this next clip, you'll see a play that's considered too rough for women's lacrosse. The shove at the end is what makes that play illegal. As you can see, there's a pretty drastic difference between men's and women's lacrosse. As lacrosse has evolved, there's become an increasing importance on player safety. In past years, new devices have been released to improve player safety, such as the Q collar, which helps prevent concussions, and improved chest protectors that help protect the heart from a sudden blow to the chest. Along with safety improvements, manufacturers are developing better and lighter sticks to enhance the game. While there have been lots of physical improvements to the game, the biggest change to modern lacrosse has been the media. In 2020, Paul Rabel, one of the best players in the Major League Lacrosse, created the Professional Lacrosse League with hopes of making professional lacrosse better for both the players and viewers. Rather than having teams based in one location, the teams travel across the country and all play in different locations. His idea proved successful, and in 2021, the PLL and MLL merged leagues, adopting one team from the MLL into the PLL. With the merging of Major League Lacrosse and the new PLL, all eyes have been on the PLL, and it has been drawing in large viewers thanks to its partnership with ESPN. This media attention is just one of the reasons why lacrosse is one of the quickest growing sports ever and will continue to grow for years to come. The sport will also continue to draw attention as it's set to return to the Olympics for the 2028 Summer Games in Los Angeles, for the first time in over 100 years. Now, I realize that I may have bored a lot of you, but lacrosse is my passion. And to my fellow seniors, find your passion and stick with it.